Hi everyone, today I want to talk to you about companies going dark. If you are a retail investor, small investor, you probably have at some point looked at microcaps, small companies. Some of these microcaps, very often, they reside on the OTC market, over-the-counter market, pink sheet, pink companies. The reason is the major exchanges like the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ, in addition to costing money to list on them, they also have minimum company market cap size requirements. If you look in this area, chances are one day, one of the companies you'll buy here will go dark on you. Today, I'm going to tell you a story about a company that went dark, and I'm going to kind of do this in a story time fashion. So let's get into this. Over here, if you look, we're going to look at Treecore. This was a company where if you were an investor in it, let's go in disclosure, up until 2004 here, they were regularly reporting. Here's their last quarterly report with the Securities and Exchange Commission. If you're an investor, all of a sudden one day you find yourself unable to find quarterly reports. The reason is because of this. They filed a Form 15, which is a notice of termination of registration. So they can basically, what they have done here is they applied to suspend their duties to report. How can that possibly be? Here's the crazy thing about this. If you were a shareholder with this company at this time, and you called them and said, I'm a shareholder, I demand, as a shareholder, as the owner of this business, an annual report. They can tell you to go pound salt, and there's nothing you can do about it. How can that possibly be? It's a peculiar thing, a weird thing with the Securities and Exchange Commission, where they actually allow companies to suspend reporting obligations. There's two ways to do it, but most companies choose this. If you have less than 300 shareholders of record, they can apply to suspend their duty to report. Let's go back to that Treecon. Whoops, that's the 10Q. Let's go back to that Form 15. So on that day, you would have got this Form 15, you would have looked, and they only have 198 shareholders of record. So they can actually suspend their duty to report, and as you can see, since then, they never reported anything else. As a shareholder, you would have been in the complete dark. Here's the crazy thing about that holder of record part. You're thinking of it as 198 shareholders, but what it actually means, it means 198 brokers or other investing channels that connect to that company that are registered with them. So what that means is, let's say you and I are with the same broker, that's two shareholders of this company. However, one holder of record. There could be 100 traders with this one brokerage that holds shares with this company, but it still only counts as one holder of record. Now, why is that really bad? Well, I mean, obviously, if you're an investor in New York, like let's say New York, and the company that you're investing in is in Arkansas, I mean, it's great to go dark for management, let's say, and because it saves them a lot of money and time, but they know what's going on in the company, but you don't. And that really sucks. Often, when companies go dark too, there is a huge hit on the price of the stock, clearly, as everybody tries to exit. Now, I believe here with Treecore, I wasn't looking at this company. They deregistered somewhere around here, but I think here is where they started to talk about it, if I'm not mistaken. And you can see that stock price plummeted, almost to zero, right? Almost to zero. You would have lost huge amount of money in that investment. Now, then it's shot back up and a whole bunch of other crazy things happen, but it is obviously terrible for you as an investor on the outside, not being an investor inside this company, to really understand that regardless of what stock price is doing, the company is good. If you're on the inside, that's fine. On the outside, you're biting your nails. Now, it's not only companies that reside on the OTC that do this. Okay, this is a much more detailed example. So let's go into story number 2. You're a shareholder in KCLI, Kansas City Life Insurance. KCLI actually listed, I believe it was on the NASDAQ. So it was on a major exchange, but it was still a microcap. It was a very small company. Over here on this day, it served a proxy statement. The proxy statement was to deregister. So as you can see, what happened is stock price really crashed over there when this happened. And you can see a lot of people looking to get out. Now, interestingly, with KCLI, these are both not that bad examples. There are much worse examples. But as you can see with KCLI, it didn't turn out all that bad. There are examples where basically price absolutely crashes to zero and never recovers. Okay, but here is their proxy statement. Proxy statement, Schedule 14A, that they filed. Now, this disclosure here actually provided a ton of information. Why are they doing it? You know, they're not always doing it just because they're jerks. They're doing it because of significant cost savings. So it costs little companies still a ton of money to be in compliance with reporting. And you can see here that they have to, you know, as a SEC reporting company, and they have to also be in compliance with the SOX, I call it SOX anyway, SOX Act, which requires internal control. So it's costly. That's what it comes down to. It's very costly. That's one issue. And you can see here, actually, this one is very detailed. They say that their benefits, you know, the absence of benefits, they talk about the absence of benefits. They don't really need liquidity. Okay. And so what they are looking to do is they are looking to do a reverse forward stock split. So what does that mean? So what this company did, if you're a shareholder in this company, they held a vote, which, by the way, management owns the majority of shares, so the vote is going to pass anyway. But you as a small shareholder, what they essentially said they're going to do is they're going to shrink the number of shares such that the number of shares falls below 250 in this case, and that makes them have less than 300 shareholders of record. What they're going to do then is they are going to, in this company's case, they actually offered to cash you out. They're going to pay for your share so that you can leave amicably, and then they were going to deregister. So I'm not sure if you kept up with all that, but pretty much they can deregister if they have less than 300 shareholders of record. So they wanted to get to that, but they also did not want to screw over their current investors. So what they said is, look, we're going to shrink the number of shareholders. We're going to reverse split. So basically, if you have 10,000 shares, for example, and a 10 to 1 reverse split means that those 10,000 shares become 10. So if a share was $2, it is now 20. And what they're going to do is that allows them to then suspend their duty to register and report, and then they're going to be nice. They're going to cash you out. They're not going to kind of screw you over and just have you stick with the company. No, they'll cash you out nicely if you choose to do that. So this was a good example of a company that did it nicely, but you can see why they did it. They're talking about the cost savings, the time savings, so a company could do this. So if you were an investor in KCLI, in this case, you wouldn't have been screwed over. You would have had the option to get cashed out or to buy more shares. And that way, if you buy more shares, you could have been a shareholder of record and kept within that 300. And then you could have possibly remained with them if you chose to do that. But Treecore did not really give you that option. If you were with Treecore, you're going down with them. You're going to go dark. Too bad, so sad. So guys, what's the moral of the story? The moral of the story is when you go and you want to play in the stock market, you really have to be careful. There are so many dangers in the stock market that you possibly would not have considered. It's not just a matter of fraudulent management or whether you believe a company is going to grow or not. There are so many other things that can happen. And this brings me to, actually, before I move on, if you are really interested in going dark, you can read this. Just Google this title and you can read this article. It's very detailed. But this now brings me to what I wanted to talk about, just something a little bit different. I forgot the name of the scale. There's like a name to it, Dunning something scale. I forgot what it's called. Dunning-Kruger, that's what it is, Dunning-Kruger. But the main idea here is that, when you start in something, you initially really think you know what you're doing. Things are going good. Maybe you made an investment or two, that beginner's luck, it really worked out, and it's going great, and then you hit the peak of inflated expectations. My brother showed me this scale, and guys, it is true. I have gone through this. As reality starts to hit in, you go into loss a couple of times, you start to really doubt yourself. You go to the trough of disillusionment, and this is where you think, man, I will never get this. I don't think I can ever understand this. And then your confidence starts to slowly, but this time at least reasonably, build up, and you eventually, hopefully one day, mature into a proper investor. So this is a true scale where your confidence goes up. You think you're great. Then something happens. You realize, man, I really overestimated my skills. And then hopefully if you stick with it, You will learn all the downfalls of the market and things to avoid. This also brings me to this quote. A low-cost index fund is the most sensible equity investment for the great majority of investors. That's what Warren Buffett said. And, I've mentioned this on my channel before. And it's not just you thinking, well, I think I can outperform the market by finding a good company. Guys, you can find a good company and then they decide to deregister. You can find a good company and you find the management is full of fraud. You can find a good company and there are so many other things that can happen. So what I'm trying to get at ultimately here is really pay attention to the market, study the market. You should really kind of enjoy your journey and beware of dark companies or companies that possibly can go dark in the market. That's it. That was story time with the OTC. Catch you next time.